Good morning. We're going to try to distill an hour's presentation into 15 minutes, so it will be a bit of a speed run. But this report that we're going to show is available on our website now, which is igea.net. So it's available to download, and you can use it however you choose. So Australia Plays has been around this year. This is our 20th year of doing this report, and this is the 9th iteration. We started doing this report 20 years ago, and I was part of that, so it shows how long I've been around, to distill the myth about who a gamer is in Australia. What do they look like? And a lot of this is around our advocacy about going to Parliament House, talking to government, and saying to them, your view of what a gamer is and our view of what a gamer is are completely different. But we had to go and get proof for that. So Bond University does this research for us every couple of years. One of the drivers for this, and maybe some of you weren't even born at this point, we didn't have an R18 for video games. And some of the first use of this report was to prove to politicians that adults play video games. And I'm sure everyone in this room understands that. So we're just going to kick some of the big points off. 82% of Australians play games. We know they play them different. We know they play them in different styles. Some of them like to snack on the train. Some of them like to spend hours playing a deeper, more immersive game. But 82% are playing games. Really interesting, for the first time this year, 51% of our survey recipients identified as being females. So it's the first time we've seen more females playing games than males. And what do you think is the biggest growing demographic there? Yes. I was going to say women over 60, but I don't want to say that now because you pointed at yourself. So more mature females are the fastest growing demographic. The average age of a gamer is 35, and we know that they've been playing for about 14 years. And interestingly, the data shows us that 81% of players are not children, they're adults. And this is a really important issue when, A, when you're crafting a game, and B, when we're advocating on behalf of the industry and talking to people. The research this year, we spent a lot of time talking to families and asked them what they do with games. And we know that 89% of parents play with their children. And this is really important to us because we understand that games are a really great way to connect. We know that people build culture and build connections through play, and that's what we're seeing them with adults and parents doing with their children. We know when we talk to people and we say to them, where are you making friends? A lot of them, nearly 30%, are making friends online, friends that they've met through a video game. And I'm jumping through these very quickly. And we say to parents, you know, what do you think are the good reasons your kids are playing games? And we're hearing them saying that it helps build resilience, it helps us and our family manage stress, and it builds self-confidence. And we know from a classroom, you know, there's lots of kids who are afraid to fail. Boys won't put their hand up in a classroom because they don't want to look stupid. But they will fail over and over and over again in a video game as a way of learning and progressing. And we think this is a really good discipline if we can just harness that, not just, you know, in a video game, but in other parts of their life. We know that the top genres are action and adventure, puzzles, and shooter and sport come around the same. If anyone wants to read about the methodology, come see us later. Yeah.
It's robust.
It's robust, yeah. Just take our word for it. Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, no, it's you, but I'll do it. What the beauty of this study actually shows over a 20-year timeline is we've got some longitudinal data. So when we initially started the study, about 75% of Australian households were playing games. We're now up to 89%, and that's something you should be thinking about as you're making games or embarking on a career in games. This stat alone blows politicians' minds when you tell them that 82% of Australians are playing games and the average time they've been playing is 14 years. So you can see a lot of that intergenerational play is certainly happening. So, you know, parents are playing with their kids, grandparents are playing with their kids, grandparents are playing with their grandchildren. It sort of continues like that. Some of the other key statistics that people are interested in, and probably something you want to consider as well as you're embarking on your career, is what sort of devices are people utilising? So in Australia for the last couple of years, consoles have overtaken smartphones. So obviously smartphones were really huge when they showed up, and they changed games, and everybody all of a sudden had a games device in their pocket. But here in Australia certainly, we really embrace the console, and you can see that through the millions and millions of units that have been sold. Also, most households have multiple devices for playing a game, which is something that's worth remembering as well. As we touched on earlier before, the average age of a gamer in Australia is 35, and the bulk of the audience is not children. And that flies in the face of all the stereotypes that we often hear about people who play games. So 71% of the audience is aged between 18 and 64. So we call that working age, and that's something also to think about as you hone your craft. Ron touched on the growth in older people over 65, and we've got 10% of that demographic playing games. So, the moral of the story here is it's only like 19% of the total audience is under 18. What I will say is the data you're seeing today, there's lots of it that's fairly consistent with global studies as well. As you make games, you won't necessarily be making them for an Australian market. Some of you will, some of you won't. But our data is not that different to what we're seeing overseas. We've got a report coming out on that today in another hour, so stay tuned for that one. This just a little bit more detail by ABS age brackets, so you can say where the higher percentage of people are playing. Also, first time ever, 51% of players in Australia are females, so that has been a statistic that everybody's loved and something you should definitely think about. We also look at how people are playing. So playtime by age and gender. So if you believed everything you read in the newspapers, people are playing games for hours and hours and hours on end every day. It's not true. Gameplay is fairly moderate, and it changes over time as people age. Also, the way they play is really important to think about as well. So we identify here casual play and in-depth play. So casual is just, small games, sitting at the bus stop, sitting on public transport, maybe sitting in here, having a quick little game on your phone. And obviously in-depth's probably more PC console related. What's changed this year is typically the more time was spent by younger audiences. It's starting to move into the older audiences now. So you can see males aged 25 to 34 are the ones that are spending the most time playing. But what's really interesting as we get down towards the back end, 65 to 94, women. Women dominate those categories. We touched on genre. Again, I think if you believed everything you read, people really only play shooters, and it's not the case. Action adventure is really dominant here in Australia, followed by puzzle. I think that's probably what brings us into older demographics. Then shooters and sport, which is probably no surprise here in Australia. What we also looked at was, for the first time, is collaborative games, so playing with other people, and competitive games. So the overwhelming preference is to play collaboratively with other people. And what we found with that is that declines as you age, and people start to play more competitively as they age. So that was a bit of a surprise one for us as well. So, and something to be mindful of as you create. We also are looking at why Australians play games. Up until our last study, there was lots of reasons for playing games, and it varied by age and demographic. The last 2 years, the majority, or all Australians are playing to have fun. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 85, you're playing to have fun. If you're 8, you're playing to have fun. It used to be older people played to keep their mind sharp. They still do that, but they still identify games as being fun. They play games for different reasons, which most of you would know, but the highest reason people play is because they get a sense of achievement. So they might not be getting that in their day-to-day life, but playing games, they're feeling like they're achieving something. People like to explore, people like to compete, people like to build. And I guess if you think about some of the best-selling games, that's fairly obvious, but again, it's just a good reminder point as we come back to that, as we come back to why we're making a game and which audience we're making it for. This is always my favourite statistic. Again, there's always been that thought that the only people who play games are teenage boys in a basement. It's not the case. You all know that. But 77% of people in Australia play games with other people. It's only 23% ever play alone. And that statistic is mind-blowing. We talk about loneliness epidemics. Games are a really important way that people are making those connections with their friends and family and others, and making friends, as we touched on before. Do you want to talk about the health and wellbeing aspects of playing?
Yep. So what we have seen, particularly over the last couple of years, Raelene touched on loneliness. We know that we've been going through a bit of a mental health crisis, I guess, and we really see people turning to video games for health and wellbeing. This really we started to see during COVID, but certainly since then, people are looking at games and as a way of self-soothing, of calming, of finding that just some time and space for themselves. And we asked, and you can see the statistics up there, we're asking people what are the potentials of video games. This is not clinically tested, this is what we're asking people about their attitude towards health and wellbeing. And you can see that, we know that creating a sense of enjoyment is important, bringing joy. And one thing, we try not to step away from at IGEA is play is okay. Having fun is a reason in and of itself to play a game. And we're often told, we make video games, they need to be good for health, they need to be good for everything. We don't step away from the fact that they should also just be fun and enjoyable and a way to connect. We know that games are used in education. We see more and more that teachers are starting to use the power of games in the classroom. It's becoming part of syllabus in a number of places. I was going to zoom in on that. Someone's taking photos, sorry. There it is, sorry, Karen. I thought I was going to give a better shot of it. We know that children are getting engaged in the classroom via games. We know that if we look at some of the larger games, some of the Ubisoft games, we know that they're embedded in curriculum to teach history, to bring history to life and to get engagement from students. Just watching the time. Can we jump in for it?
Sure. Games are also used in the workplace. So we see a lot of games being used to train employees. So, often these are bespoke games that are built within the Australian industry. But again, employers recognise that it's a great way to get that engagement, that retention of knowledge, just a more interesting way to embed people into the workforce or induct people into a particular workforce. There's also a recognition now that yes, games are fun, and yes, they're enjoyable, and yes, they connect people, but there's a lot of other reasons to play, and that's to develop skills. So people in Australia believe that, games do help you with your cognitive skills, they enhance your online and digital literacy, they're creative, you look at that platforms like Roblox, look at the creativity that's taking place there, and my kids are a lot younger and smarter than me. It's a good way to build teamwork, enhance your communication, and also even your leadership skills. So again, just a lot of those skills that sit outside traditional fun. What we have got in the report, which hopefully you'll find useful as you're putting together your plans for your games, is just the differences in some of the demographics. So, between the ages of 18 to 34, we actually see more females than males play this particular study. We talk about the types of devices that they use and if people are playing games socially. What I loved in this one is it was 47% of people in that age group identified that they'd made friends through playing games. which was, I thought, a really huge statistic. 47% is enormous. Again, we touched on the loneliness epidemic and how hard it is to make friends as adults. Games is certainly part of that. And if you're going to PAX this weekend, you'll see it. You'll see people who come in from all over the country to meet the people they've been playing online with for years in some cases. So it's a really great experience. So I won't go into every age group, but if you want to, as Ron mentioned, the report's available on our website, igea.net. Today we're part of a global study as well, so you can see the differences in various countries as to how and why people play. And I'll be in the session just after lunch as well. So if anybody's got any questions, please come and ask us. Thank you so much.